Well, you knew it was going to end with how it began, and now we have the fallout between the feud of Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo. The mayor is on vacation in the Southwest right now. We're left with the region. That's about all I can give you for details. And these comments where he unloaded on the governor before he left are still resonating.
What I found was he engaged in his own sense of strategies, his own political machinations. And what we've often seen is if someone disagrees with him openly, some kind of revenge or vendetta follows.
All right, let's bring in a panel right now because we got a bunch of questions, including among them, what is the end game here for de Blasio, and will he now have a tougher time than even before getting anything done when it comes to Albany? Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College and professor of campaign management at NYU. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Richard St. Paul, Republican strategist, a former vice chair for the National Black Republican Association. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. All right, Jeannie, listen, do you think it was just somebody who had it up to here and then he wanted to unload before he went away, or this was obviously a strategic plan? And if you say it's the latter, what exactly is the strategy now with a governor who doesn't like anybody to even look twice at him, let alone to blow him up before he heads off for an 8-day trip?
You know, he is frustrated, and you can understand him being frustrated, and it was strategic. It was planned. I don't know what the end game is, but it was planned because he made the same comments earlier to New York One. He made them to the New York press corps. So it was clearly a plan the day before he left. And, you know, I have to say, I have been a critic of him making these claims, and yet if you listen to Democrats and progressives on the ground, they roundly support him and say that the governor is out of line in so much of what happened in Albany. That said, I have real questions as to whether this is an electoral game or a governing game, because he's still got to get wins on the ground when it comes to, you know, mayoral control of the schools, for instance. He's got to go back to Albany, back to the governor, back to the Senate Republicans, and get that from them. So I'm not sure how he gets wins on the ground there, but electorally, this makes sense. I don't know about from a governing perspective.
You've been around campaigns and also some electeds.
I worked in state government.
Exactly. So to that end, would you have counseled de Blasio? You got nothing to lose. That's what some folks said. They asked him to bite his tongue on this one because he had it up to here, or how he thought he was getting manhandled by this governor. And apparently this governor only reads weakness if you capitulate on these things. Would you have told him, go ahead, you got nothing to lose at this point. We didn't get what we wanted out of the budget, or what are you doing? You still got to work with this guy when you come back.
Yeah, again, I would do the latter. What are you doing? You still have to work with this guy. You don't have enough power and influence to influence those in the Senate. The Senate for Republicans, for example, who control the Senate, and he needs to pass legislation, as Janine mentioned, mayoral control. The Senate Republicans are very upset at him for trying to interfere in elections and run folks. He's not Mike Bloomberg. He doesn't have $1 billion to spend. He's got to have a different strategy how to deal with people he disagrees with, including Governor Cuomo. And this certainly isn't helping. Both men are deteriorating in their poll numbers. Cuomo, I think, sends a spike in his poll numbers after he beat himself front and center for the prisoner escape.
Absolutely,
But de Blasio still needs to work with Cuomo, who has the upper hand in this instance. And I think the strategy that he's using by talking, and he may be right about vendettas, because it's not the first time we heard about Cuomo's vendettas, but that's not the strategy he wants to use if he wants a partner in Albany.
Andrew, we've seen since the both men went to their respective corners, Democrats carefully deciding either to stick a toe in this and throw their 2 cents, or others staying out. If there's been 2 whipping boys for the governor, at least on the statewide level, it certainly has been the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, who seemingly can't do a press conference unless he's allowed to by the governor, and DiNapoli, who I don't know what he did to Andrew Cuomo, but it's been Cuomo's ambition to do everything he can to either neuter him or throw him out of office. They haven't said boo. So where do you think, in terms of the scorecard for Democrats, they've come down post this food fight?
Well, I think you're going to see the Democrats closer to New York City and the Hudson Valley, Long Island, uniting behind de Blasio to a certain degree, while more upstate Democrats are going to be harder to bring onto the reservation. I think de Blasio is trying to play a long game here. There may have been some frustration in what he said, though I tend to discount that. But the whole rolling over and playing dead hadn't exactly been working for De
Well,
Blasio
the
in
New York
his
City
dealings with
congressional
Cuomo.
delegation, the Democrats there, they haven't been picking sides on this one either. They've been lying low.
They haven't, but you know that their interests lie with
Sure.
the same interests that De Blasio has, so they don't really have to come out and take a side on this. They've been taking a side with their votes up until now and will continue to do so going forward. So, I think de Blasio is playing a long game. He might be trying to influence elections in the state, especially on the Senate side, and hope for a Senate majority in a year and a half's time. And if that's the case, then New York City will be better served just by the numbers.
I think the strategy has to be for de Blasio. One of the weapons that he has is he has access to the largest media market in the country, which is New York City. And he's got to come up with a strategy to outline his plan to the media. He doesn't talk to the media a whole bunch. And if he has a strategy, he needs to talk to the media about it, what it is, and how Cuomo needs to
I
help.
also think it would help if he figured out if he wants to be a national player, if he's the New York City mayor, because in the month before this, he was the king of progressivism nationally here, and now all of a sudden he's fighting over city issues. But Dom, in answering the same thing I asked these guys, put it maybe even a different context, because speaking of the de Blasio administration, we're getting another inside look as to how it works or doesn't work. We're getting some of the releases of emails from Rachel Nordlinger. You remember her, the former chief of staff to First Lady Charlene McRae, and she removed, or resigned, I should say, from office after it came out who both the boyfriend was in terms of his rap sheet, and also some of the comments her son also decided to post online, anti-police, etc. Well, this particular email is one that was sent to the press office, and she's concerned with the mayor's relationship with her old boss, Reverend Al Sharpton, and doesn't want certain emails between the two of them released to the public. Quote, and I'm reading here verbatim, "It will set us backwards with Sharpton when the mayor and he seemed to have a reset moment last night." There's always been this feeling, Dom, that the mayor walks on eggshells with Al Sharpton, but more than maybe even so predecessors who had to deal with him, to live with him, that he puts him up on the same stage with the police commissioner. He seems to check with Reverend Al before he makes a statement on anything else. Obviously, the Garner situation came early on in his term. You read some of the emails, and some other ones are even more detailed than that. Were you surprised by any of it?
Absolutely not. I don't even see what's newsworthy in that.
It made it look like you had an administration and a communications chief who was more worried about the Reverend than the mayor.
Newsflash. I know a lot of people don't like Sharpton, but you don't get elected mayor of New York City these days unless you have a relationship with him. It's called a kingmaker. That's what he is. Some people don't like him. I understand that. He's polarizing. I understand that. But what's newsworthy about a chief of staff for the First Lady, whose job is to safeguard the image of the First Lady and the mayor? What's newsworthy in the fact of their...
Well, for me, Jeannie, what was newsworthy was she seemed to me more concerned about the perception of her old boss than she was about the mayor. Did I get a misread on that?
I don't know if she seemed more concerned. I mean, I think that you've got to give Rachel Nordlinger credit. When she was committed to the First Lady, she was committed to the administration. But I think, to Dominic's point, the administration, when it's de Blasio and the First Lady, it also includes Sharpton. So I think when we read it as committed to Sharpton, it's committed to all of them, because I think they rise and fall together. And I think you get that sense, that at least that's the sense I got from reading those, that she felt like we're in this together. And so if you do something that is, anti-de Blasio, it's going to hurt all of us.
Of all the people you could have picked to be the chief of staff or the chief of staff to the First Lady, you pick somebody who just worked for Al Sharpton. There was a reason for hiring her. There was a reason she was going to be on staff to serve as a go-between between the two.
But if you don't
I'm with Dominic.
but gentlemen, okay, but if we don't think that Sharpton is effective, go ask Bill Thompson if he's effective or not.
I think he's a power player. I wouldn't call him a kingmaker, because there's a lot of
Ask
things that go in-
Schumer,
there's a lot of dynamics in
ask
your politics.
Gillibrand. They all come and kiss his ring.
I agree.
No,
He's
no doubt on
he's a
that,
power
Dom. I
player,
will
but-
say that you and I both know that he waited till really late in the game here to all of a sudden, after the polls already said that de Blasio was going to come out ahead, before he says, "Bill, love you like a brother, but Bill who?" Okay? And then he basically left
And that
Thompson
election
standing at the
was-
altar. Thompson wasn't going to win it.
By the way, that election was very, very, very close. So, I mean, you're talking about a couple, maybe couple thousand votes. It was a very close election.
But what I'm coming back to on the de Blasio front is, the expression. If you're going to have a fight with the king, you kill the king. Okay?
You better
He
kill the
chose
king.
the fight with Cuomo, right? And you look at who he surrounded himself with in the past. Remember the whole fiasco about his press sec, who then was going out with Spitzer and whatever else? That blew up even before he, I think, took the oath of office. Then you have the Nordlinger thing and everything else. He better have a strategy here once he comes back from the Southwest.
Richard.
Yeah.
U.S. attorney. That's the
He hopes he
strategy.
does his work for him.
Richard,
How's he going to win?
But he didn't have
How's he
to
going to win?
Okay, he didn't have to have a strategy. And here's why he did not. Wait. The reason why he didn't have to have a strategy, Richard, for lack of a better term, when you've been attacked and beat up by the bully 5 or 6 times, eventually your mom, or in my case, my aunt, who told me, no, you're going to stand up and fight this bully. That's all. It's no strategy. De Blasio, probably with his wife's urging, knowing her very well, and his own thought process, said, listen, this guy has been rolling me over from day one. I got this guy reelected. Progressives were going to abandon him, and then he turns his back on me. You know what? I'm not taking it
all right.
anymore.
Now,
that's
if
what
you're
happened.
Cuomo who says this, I got no doubt when you come back from the Southwest, every day you're going to be doing something to go after the guy.
No.
But de Blasio doesn't seem to have the fight in his belt.
Cuomo's going to play nice. Kathy Hochul
No,
this
I'm
afternoon.
saying reverse the roles, okay?
Okay.
To me, if Cuomo was the one that was attacked, he's going to make it his life ambition to go after the guy who attacked
no
him.
doubt about it.
De
Right.
Blasio, I'm not so sure. Look how he handled the police after, obviously, the tragedies and after they turned their backs on him and everything else. He was read by many to have shown some weakness here in trying to capitulate as it went down. Maybe he didn't have a choice. But my only point is, he better have the fight here to actually follow through on it and not just
De
do one press
Blasio
conference.
I've always said this. He has an issue governing. It's one thing to campaign, it's another thing to govern. And he proves over and over again that he has an issue governing.
He got some stuff done.
But Richard, here's
Like
the
what?
strategy. Kathy
Without-
Hochul,
like
the
what?
lieutenant governor, came out this afternoon and said, listen, this battle is much ado about nothing. They have more agreement in terms of their politics. So here's the strategy. Listen, homeboy, de Blasio to Cuomo, I'm not going to take it anymore. And that's the strategy. So when you act up and act out of vendetta or out of meanness, I'm going to call it for what it. That's what the mayor said.
But don't you think that the governor is going to say that on the one hand and continue on the other hand to do exactly what he's been doing to
Yes.
de Blasio? I mean,
But
so
it
that's
wasn't
the
gonna change
truth.
anyway.
And that,
Absolutely.
and so then de Blasio is going to be in a position from a governing perspective of can he rack up any wins under these conditions unless Democrats take over
I mean,
the
look
Senate.
at Universal
Exactly.
Pre-K. He got outmaneuvered. Yes, he got it at the end, but it was on the governor's conditions and everything else and how the whole thing was handled.
What has
Right.
he been able to accomplish?
I don't know. I don't know how this whole plays
Albany.
out, but I think he's
Exactly.
right. If
He's
Bahara
a-
doesn't do something for de Blasio here,
He's embarrassed
Or-
Cuomo, and so
Yes.
Cuomo has to play nice. The bad ego, whatever you want to call it, he has to put it on
But
the
he
back
hasn't even
seat.
done a good job embarrassing him. And you're right. The New York City seats, Marty Golden, for example, in Brooklyn, if you can turn that into a Democratic seat, knock off the few Republican seats in the city that they have, then de Blasio may be able to score a win. But I don't see how he's going to do it
You're
otherwise.
assuming that the power dynamic in Albany stays the way it has been, and it has been shifting.
What do you
It's
mean,
been
unless somebody else gets arrested
No, it's been
too?
eroding away from Cuomo. He doesn't have the as full-throated
Oh, no.
political muscle as he once did.
you
and if
could
that
argue.
continues,
I'm not. You
I
could
think he
argue.
still
You're
does.
100%. Your point, Andrew. But in the absence of a Silver and even a Skelos and whatever else, and not seasoned other people in the room, there's only one guy who knows how to still play the game that's
And
sitting
that's
at the
exactly
table,
right.
and that's this governor. And as screwed up as Albany is right now, you could argue he's got even more leverage than he did before. Or, I don't know. We'll see. It's fascinating how this whole thing's going to play out. I'm also fascinated when they come back, what they say. All right, we come back. We already know about the rift on the right that's making things more complicated for the huge field of Republican candidates. But what about the divide on the left here? We're going to tell you how things could even be more difficult for Hillary Clinton than a lot of us imagined just a few short weeks ago.